So fresh off the stage for uDiscovermusic.com, it is the Zombies. Hello.
Hiya.
Hello.
How was it?
It was brilliant. It was absolutely lovely. It was really, really nice. Very, very warm crowd. The sun was shining. It's a beautiful way to spend an afternoon.
It was a short set for us.
Yeah.
I mean, 45 minutes is just about the shortest set we ever played. So we had to all the time just be aware of that, and we went over it a little bit, but I think we're okay.
And so as festival goes, because you've probably done quite a few, how do you think this one stands out amongst the others out there?
It's wonderful. It's a family festival, very friendly. Of course, we've got the weather, which always helps. And if I lived anywhere near here, then I'd love to come to this festival. I think it's beautiful.
I think it's always great these days how festivals are so eclectic. You've got, you've got folk-inspired stuff. You've got country sort of stuff. You've got, and when we played at Glastonbury, there were all sorts of different sorts of music and acts going on.
Well, that's the one, like you said, it's the wonderful thing about here as well, is that you've got, you've got a country and blues stage, you've got a prog stage, you've got a classic rock stage. It's just. And it's all in one place with great food and beer.
And people embrace the whole thing, which is
Yeah.
great, actually.
Yeah, well, they make a whole weekend of it, don't they? Come and camp and...
And as Colin said, when you're lucky enough to get weather like
Yeah.
this, it makes it so sweet, doesn't it?
It does indeed. So, when you first started, you were part of that whole British invasion in America and stuff. Did you ever go to any of the festivals over there, like Woodstock or anything?
Well, Woodstock, I mean, I'll tell you a story about Woodstock. The Zombies had just split up, and I'd formed a production company with our original bass player, Chris White. We went over to New York. We were doing a production deal. We happened to have the #1 record in the States at the time, which was Time of the Season, with the Zombies, even though we'd broken up. And while we were there, the people from the record company said, there's this festival down the road called Woodstock. Why don't you come along? And I said, no, I can't be bothered.
Oh, no.
And that's one thing that one place I would have loved to have gone, actually.
Yeah, I bet you regret that, don't you?
I really regret it, but I mean, you can't look at these things in hindsight, really.
No,
You
exactly. What are you up to next?
Well, then absolutely next we're going to Belgium to do a festival, and then we go back to the States because we seem to tour there 3 times a year at least. And so we'll be going at the end of August to the States, and we'll be there for the whole of September. And actually, I mean, our concerts are booked out all the way through next year. We're going to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the recording of Odessey and Oracle.
Okay.
And we'll start off in America. Actually, we'll start off in Jamaica, playing a concert in Jamaica.
Really? Have you ever played there before?
No. I've holidayed there, but I've never been.
Yeah.
But that's where we start. And then we go on to the States. And then I think we're going to come back here and play a show that will feature Odessey and Oracle from beginning to end. I don't know if you know, but God, I've forgotten what the magazine's called now.
Rolling Stone,
sorry, named it Odessey and Oracle as one of the top 100 albums of all time.
Oh, okay.
And when you think how many albums are released every week, it's incredible to be one of the top 100 albums of all time.
It is.
And so,
especially as it didn't sell when it came out.
it's a phenomenon. It's a complete mystery.
Do you think it was more of cult classic in a way, and then it sort of becomes big off the back of that? It's like, that's the album
But
that
it took
you
about
should
10 years for anyone to really appreciate it. It's really
how that
weird.
happens.
And I told a little story on stage that Paul Weller completely floored us, because 10 years after it came out, he was #1 in the charts with the Jam.
Yeah.
And he said, my favourite album of all time is Odessey and Oracle. And as I said on stage, that's something that he still says today. And he goes out still and buys copies of the album for people who haven't got it, which is really sweet, isn't it?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
He's like your publicist. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
I know. It's great.
Not bad ones to have.
But a lot of other people as well, a lot of other famous established artists, but also a lot of developing independent bands as well, still seem to pick up on it. So that's really sweet.
Why do you think it is? What is it about that album?
Don't know.
It's an utter mystery. I've got absolutely no idea. It did pick up a few good reviews when it first came out, but as commercially, it was absolutely not a success.
It sells more every year now than
And it did
when
then.
it first came
And this
out.
is
With a #1
nearly
record on
50,
it.
nearly 50 years after the event. it's bizarre. I've got no idea. No one's promoting it. No one's marketing it.
No.
And it sells in bucket loads. I absolutely don't understand.
So if there's one of your albums that you would say is the definitive sound of the Zombies, what one would you say it is?
Well, I think that's a very hard question to answer because we were only together in the first incarnation professionally for 3 years, and we only made 2 albums. The first one was put together in 2 days, like the Beatles' first album was. The second one was Odessey and Oracle. So at that time, I would have said it was Odessey and Oracle. But we're very proud of what we're doing now, and the album that we've just had out has just made we had a phone call from Billboard on the last American tour saying we just wanted you to know that you're in the top 100 album charts for the first time as the Zombies in 50 years. So I would say at the moment that is the definitive sound of the Zombies. Yeah.
That's the one you should listen to if
it's
you
called
want
Still Got That Hunger. Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
Incredible stuff. So what were you listening to that got you into music? Was there an artist, one particular artist or band that made you go, I want to be a musician?
There were things that were common to all of us, like the great rock and roll people of the time. I would have to say Elvis in 1956 turned my world around. We were listening to, Little Richard, Chuck Berry, the same artists that everyone was listening to at the time. But I always loved the Miles Davis group of 1958 with John Coltrane and Cannonball Adderley and that whole panoply of jazz. And I grew up on classical music, and I was still listening to that. Although I wasn't classically trained, but so I never stopped. So I think all those things informed in a very indirect way. We just thought we were being the Beatles.
So John Coltrane, that's shocked me actually. What is it about John Coltrane that you like so much?
I just I remember the first time. I grew up for the first 10 years of my life really just liking classical music because actually the popular music that was around at the time was pretty poor. And then suddenly I heard Elvis, and I wanted to hear the rawest rock and roll that I could find, and that led me very quickly into black music, into blues. Hound Dog was the first thing I heard of Elvis, but I very quickly discovered that Big Mama Thornton did the original, and I loved her version of it. And then I got into all the blues things, like many people at the time. The obvious people, B.B. King, Ray Charles, just completely blew my socks off. And around about the same time, I remember the first time I heard some modern jazz. I was only about 14, and I was wandering down a beautiful place in St Albans called the Lake. It's an artificial lake, but it's lovely. And out of a window, it was about 10 o'clock at night, I heard what was, in inverted commas, modern jazz. And it sounded so strange to me, but I couldn't work it out, but I thought it was great. And that led me into trying to find things. And then I happened to hear the Miles Davis group of 1958 with Cannonball Adderley, John Coltrane. There's a pianist called Wynton Kelly. Later on, Bill Evans, who I absolutely adored. And really got into that. But I didn't stop listening to Elvis. While I was getting really turned on to Miles, I was still listening to just as much Elvis, as well.
So do you think it was Elvis that got you into the blues? Is that how you...
Oh yeah, without any question.
Which is hilarious, isn't it?
Well, not really, because the thing is, when Elvis came out, it was so unusual to hear someone sound like that as a white man in those days that most of the black stations in the States that they called race stations, they thought he was black. So the thing is, because no one sounded like that was white at the time, so it's so hard from this distance to imagine what it sounded like in the context of the time.
Incredible. Well, listen, it's been lovely chatting to you. Thank you.
Lovely chatting to you
Yeah,
too.
good. I'll let you go and enjoy the festival.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.